Hello and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and we have a great program for you tonight. As usual, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by some of the best sports writers from around the region, Paul Frumelt from the Fairfax Times, Phil Murphy from Digital Sports, and BJ Kuparoulas, a contributor to the Washington Post. But before we get to all of the news and notes from the past week, we want to thank the folks that helped make this program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Sturbutzel and Fat Boy Photos for all the photos that you see on tonight's program. You can get copies of this program and all the games that we broadcast from around the region at www.pressboxvideo.com. And you can check out our website with our Video Vault feature at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page and send us any comments, suggestions, or story ideas that you have. Well, before we jump into football, a couple of news and notes that we want to mention. First of all, it's going to be a big weekend over at Madison High School. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary, and one of the festivities is, of course, their homecoming game against South Lakes. That's going to be at 3 p.m. on Saturday, and before that, they're having a Taste of the Town event where you can sample foods and beverages from local restaurants. Also, speaking of 50th anniversaries, Stuart is also celebrating their 50th anniversary. They'll be retiring the jersey of Charlie Garner on October 16th during the halftime of their game against Yorktown. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into football now, and we will be starting with the Concord District this week and show you what happened during Week 5 for these Concord District teams. You'll see a couple of wins, a couple of losses. Robinson, the big one, coming up with the win. We're going to talk about that game very soon. Also wins by Chantilly and Centerville this week. But let's talk about that Robinson-Lake Braddock game because that was a huge one, guys. You have, first of all, an undefeated team from the Concord District squaring off against Lake Braddock, who we've had a lot of good things to say about all season long. It was the battle of the passing game for Lake Braddock versus the rushing game for Robinson. You see the numbers that those running backs put up. Guys, it was a season low on rushing yards for Robinson, but they still have enough to pull out the W.
Well, I originally said that I didn't think that Robinson could run on Lake Braddock, that big, strong, and Kelly Doe, people like that on the Lake Braddock defensive line. Season low, but 205 yards combined between Connor Riley and Jared Velasquez. A couple names that we're going to see on. We ranked the top 3 players: offensive quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and offensive lines. You're going to see that later on in the show. You'll see some of those names on there. But they were able to get the job done, Phil.
Yeah, Paul, we talked about season low. Still 201 rushing yards. I mean, that's far from a lackadaisical effort. And this team came out first drive, moved the ball on the ground, and then mixed it up. Found Matt Zenolato for a 40-yard reception, really got Braddock on their heels, went up early. As we take a look at the highlights, Braddock allowed a 5-play drive to start the game, and here's Connor Riley from the 10. I am Connor Riley, and I approve this message. Gets the ball inside, runs through the entire defense. 10-yard touchdown run for Riley, and with 9:47 left in the first, 7-0, but Braddock immediate response. Michael Niebuhr scored, making it 7-7. Now we fast forward to the second quarter. First Braddock possession of the second quarter. My Facebook friend, Michael Rezatar, running a wheel route. Michael Niebuhr goes upstairs to Rezatar, 45 yards. He's all alone. Takes it to the house. Big day for Rezatar. More on him later. That made it 14-7. But next possession, Braddock would muff the punt, giving the Rams the ball at the 8. Paul, you can not just do that. You can't do that. Connor Riley, 3-yard touchdown run, makes it 14 all at the break. This kid only had 14 rushing attempts last year. 2 touchdowns here in the first half. Big part of their offense. Now, third quarter, Mike double pits to Lopresti with the play fake to Jared Velasquez. Buys some time, jumps over a golf cart, hugs a cute blonde girl, and finds Michael Creighton for a 9-yard touchdown. With 11:13 left, Robinson has a 21-14 lead, but Braddock coming back. Michael Niebuhr on the day, 26 of 40 passing, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. I think his best all-around effort of the year, and finds Mike Rezatar again. 5 receptions, 92 yards, 2 scores for Rezatar with that 30-yard touchdown reception. Very good reception to highlight ratio for him. Then Lopresti, one more time. He went to Jared. Goes to Jared Velasquez, 26-yard reception, puts the ball inside the Braddock 10. And again, this is a tie game, 2:42 left, now 1:02 left, ball at the Lake Braddock 3. Connor Riley, his 3rd touchdown run of the game, this time just plowing over a defensive back at the goal line, really punctuating that run and the effort. He went 22 carries, 82 yards, 3 scores. Velasquez, 16 carries for 133. Paul, complete effort across the board. Robinson, Blake Braddock really had a lot of momentum in the second quarter. That muffed punt really allowed Robinson to get the momentum going into halftime. They carried that through to the second half and never trailed after that point.
Okay, so we just saw what Connor Riley did, 3 touchdowns. Jared Velasquez, 133 yards. Where does that running back duo rank in the Northern region right now?
Kind of catch me off guard with that question. I think they're right up there towards the top. How could they not be? And I think we'll touch on this later, but I think it's more of a credit to their offensive line. They lost 3 starting skill position players in Timmy Meyer, Winton Fox, Alex Murray. Those were their 3 horses last year. Remember, Riley only had 15 carries. So yes, while this running back duo has done a tremendous job, Lepresti's been very efficient. Again, Lepresti 7 for 12 passing, 92 yards, and that touchdown pass to Mike Creighton. I think a big credit to this is the offensive line and the defense. They got some young guys in that defense too, but they're punishing, they're opportunistic, and they really don't get beat.
A couple things to mention. We mentioned that later on in the show, we rank, Monica, myself, BJ, and Phil rank our top 3 running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and offensive lines. Stay tuned for that. Also, there's a shakeup at the top in our top 10 this week, so make sure to stay tuned for that. We're going to go back to the games last week. We saw Robinson improve to 5-0, but don't forget about Chantilly playing Hayfield. Monica has all the details.
Well, you guys were just talking about the running game for Robinson. Another team that's had an impressive running game so far this year is Chantilly. They squared off against Hayfield. This is one of the ones that we picked last week. Now, you see the numbers there. And guys, about this one, Chantilly comes out on fire. 28 points in the first quarter, 14 more by halftime. The game not in question. I talked about Chantilly's running game. They've relied a lot on Mike Ferris this year. But you see now the quarterback, Romine, putting up some impressive numbers to one of his favorite targets there, Braden Voorhees.
Yeah, with that running game Chantilly has, you add the passing game, it makes them dangerous. You saw 49 points. I mean, that's a huge key for Chantilly this year.
Well, let's not forget, I was dumb enough to pick Hayfield in this game. That's not a discount of Hayfield. It's just Chantilly's a great home team. And we forget, their 2 losses, week 1 at South County. They had South County on the ropes. The charge of defense, nothing came out when they moved their lips, just a bunch of gibberish. They forgot about Dre. Andre Simmons gets the game-winning touchdown reception with 8 seconds left. And then they go to Woodson. They have Woodson down 14-7 and give up 19 points in the final 8 minutes, 11 seconds of that game. So this Chantilly team's much stronger than we expect. And the sick thing is they play Robinson next week. We'll talk about our picks later, but it's possible this team could be 3-3 with those 3 losses coming to the top 3 teams in Division 6. Take a look at the highlight. Chantilly already up 7-0, and here's Mike Ferris. He had 2 touchdowns on the day. Here's his first. Made it 14-0 with 4 minutes left in the first quarter. Now, 46-yard punt return for Chris Martin would set up Jimmy Hicks, and that's using your dipstick, Jimmy. 6-yard touchdown run made it 21-0 for Chantilly. Then Billy Pratt recovers a fumble. Chantilly, first play after the fumble recovery, ball at the 31. Romine came into this game with no touchdowns, 7 picks. He's going to improve the QB rating a little bit. Finds Braden Voorhees, as Monica mentioned, 31-yard touchdown reception, 28-0 after the first quarter. Then early second quarter, Romine again dialing up Voorhees. Voorhees on the day, 3 catches, 2 of them go for touchdowns. Madness to Magnet keeps attracting me. That made it 35-0. Chantilly ran away with it. Strike up Chantilly late. This team had their best effort of the season, having that passing game to complement the running game. Now they did lose Kevin Rutherford for the year a couple games ago, but Ferris, very solid effort for him. Hicks spelled him well, and Carson Romine, again, 2 touchdown passes, 190 yards through the air. All around, absolutely great game, and it sets up a very interesting matchup next week against Robinson.
Yeah, Chantilly probably the best team at 3-2 right now in the Northern region. Another Concord District team that put up some big points last week was Centerville. They played Mount Vernon, and Monica has the details.
That's right, Centerville and Mount Vernon squaring off. Centerville getting the 29-point win. We've been talking a lot about the running game with these Concord District teams there. You see Manny Smith and Adam Garrity both putting up big numbers for the Wildcats. Mount Vernon tries to answer. Kenneth Harris coming up with 2 touchdowns, but just not enough, guys. Centerville definitely giving a good, strong effort against this Mount Vernon team that struggled a bit.
Yeah, certainly. You see Centerville, a team that had a down year last year, a team that's very young, as you mentioned. Is this team gelling together?
They are, and they play Herndon this week, and I think they have a legitimate shot to win that game. We'll talk about Herndon's game with Langley later, but Centerville in this game, it was a back-and-forth game for a lot of it. They scored the final 21 unanswered points. Ken Eckenham in this game had 2 touches. Both were touchdowns. Warren Denny was an absolute freak outside, and when you run for 440 yards, you're not going to lose a lot of games. They held Mount Vernon to negative 11 yards in the fourth quarter. Now, Mount Vernon, to be fair, was the second to last team in the state to score a touchdown this year. The first touchdown came last week. So Centerville did give up some big plays, but they also made up for it with Garrity. He returned 2 kicks for a touchdown in this game last year. He had a 65-yard touchdown run. Manny Smith, you name it. They were absolutely outstanding.
All right, well, that does it for the first couple of batches of highlights, but BJ Kubarulis was in the Players' Lounge, and Monica's going to set everything up for you.
Well, that's right. BJ Kubarulis called up with 2 players this week from the South Lakes football team, 2 heroes from their game against Mclean, Jawan Jones and Sean Price. So now take a look at BJ's interview with some of these stars from the Liberty District.
And welcome into another edition of the Players Lounge. I'm BJ Kubarulis. Joining me in studio today are our 2 players of the week. That would be Jawan Jones, the running back from South Lakes here to my left, and there on the far side of your screen is Sean Price, a 6'3" junior wide receiver who had 2 touchdowns in a 28-21 victory over Mclean this week, and he does not play basketball even though he's 6'3". I'm going to let him off the hook for that one. Okay, look, guys, let's jump in to how big this victory was for South Lakes. Jawan, we'll start with you. You had a monster day, over 230 yards rushing on just 15 carries, and you broke a long one. Tell me a little bit about what this victory means for South Lakes, which has had some tough times in the last few years.
Yeah, it means a lot to us, and it means a lot to our coaches, too. You know, their confidence is always up. You know, they're a great bunch of coaches, and, you know, just their style of coaching has just transformed us over the years, and we're doing a lot better. And our offensive line, everyone's getting bigger, and, you know, it's just raising the spirits up and resting, you know, hoping for the old times.
That's right. You mentioned the old times. Just a few years ago, in 2002, South Lakes went to the Division V Region Final. They won that, and then they went to the state tournament. We won't talk about what happened there. It was not a pretty sight, guys, but you are looking for a better outcome, really, than has been in the past couple of years. Sean, let's talk a few numbers. 17-44 in the last 6 years. I know those were not your teams, but your team is now 4-1 and 3-0, undefeated in the Liberty District. Tell me a little bit about how that feels to be a part of that.
It feels really good. The only winning team I was on was our freshman team, and we did pretty well. And then just being on the varsity team, because I didn't play last year, it's pretty good, just helping out, just doing what I can.
And you certainly did your part this week. You reeled in 2 touchdowns. You had a really long one. I think it was like a 79-yard bomb from quarterback Sean Reyna, who's having a great season for you guys, coming off an injury from last year. And you also had a 2-yard fade pass. You know I'm going to get into you about it. A little push off in the end zone, but tell me, walk me through the 2-yard fade pass that you reeled in.
He was actually playing inside, which he's supposed to, and he came up to jam me, so I faked in and went out. And I kind of saw the ball, but I wasn't really sure where I wanted to jump. And I just happened to jump, and he went forward. I don't know if that's a penalty or not.
Right.
But I just caught the ball and landed in bounds.
Right. And you've had some coaching, if you will, from some college receivers. Your brother, A.J. Price, Penn State wide receiver. Is there something to be said for your relationship? Has he taught you anything? Has he told you anything about playing at the next level?
He didn't really tell me anything, actually. We don't really talk about Penn State sports or anything. The only thing we'll touch on is me going to Penn State, him forcing me to go to Penn State.
Right.
But as advice, all he does is say, just go out and play the game.
Right. A former wide receiver for the Seahawks. His teams did not have the same success that your team is having now. Let's get back into that. Jawan, you mentioned a little bit about some of those culture changes, the confidence now, the level is through the roof. A big victory. Now, a Mclean victory in years past probably wouldn't mean a whole lot because they haven't had as much success. Both teams, though, this year having some success, so it really was a vital game for you guys. You guys have a schedule now that really doesn't give you any breaks. You go and play Madison on Saturday. You're going to play Fairfax, Dominion, and then you end with Langley and Stonebridge. Now, before you get to Stonebridge, those teams have a 9-12 combined record. However, you end the season with Stonebridge at 5-0. I'm going to ask you guys about Stonebridge because you can't talk about the Liberty without talking about it. But how do you beat a Madison squad that has certainly had your guys' number in the last few years?
Oh, Madison is tough. They're always tough. They run the same amount of plays they do every year. And, you know, we just got to match their toughness. And I think we're really doing that right now in practice. And, you know, Madison is it's just like knowing what you're supposed to do, and if you can do what you're supposed to do, and then they're pretty easy to stop, but they're pretty tough if you can't.
Yeah, they're a power running team. They're going to grind it out. However, this year they've decided to start throwing the ball. They lost their running back to a knee injury, so now it's like, you got to guess on who you're going to cover and what they're going to run. Now, you guys certainly run a pretty cool offense as well now that you've got some weapons there and a senior quarterback that can deliver the football. Let's talk a little bit about what you guys can accomplish. Sean, I'm going to put the Stonebridge question in your court. I'll give you a little chance there to talk about that Wildcat. But you guys have played them before, obviously. Stonebridge is a team that has dominated the Liberty District. They have never lost a Liberty District game. I know we're looking way far ahead. Granted, if you guys handle your business against Madison, that could set up to be the Liberty District Championship against Stonebridge in the final week. Could they script it any better?
No, but I actually do want to play Stonebridge because I never got the chance to play a varsity Stonebridge team.
Wow.
And I actually do want to see what they have because we have weapons and they have weapons.
Yeah.
All we have to do is execute and get down because our line is doing phenomenal and our quarterback is putting the ball everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you guys mentioned now that, after so many years of difficulties there, Coach Ellenberger has really kept the faith there. You guys have bought in. You've got a lot of weapons. You guys are only juniors. All your skill kids are juniors. You're really only going to lose your quarterback at that skill position. So a lot of success to come. What can you guys accomplish this year? We'll ask you both the same question. Sean, let's start with you and we'll end with you, Juwan.
I'm thinking we could go to the district championship. We can go to regions as well. I think we have the weapons too. Just at running back with Jawan, Darius, Stefan, Bobby, and at receiver, me, Seth, Tony, Mikey when he's there. We can do really well. I'm thinking we can beat Madison and we can give Stonebridge a good run.
All right, Sean getting a lot of shout-outs. He's going to get a lot of thank you, a lot of texts tonight when people watch. What about you, Jawan? What do you think this team can do? What's this team capable of?
I think our team is capable of going to states, and I'm saying that because I have confidence in my offensive line. They're very big and very strong, and K-Ball, everyone knows about Kevin Ball. And, I think that our defense is a little underrated too, and I think our defense is going to step it up for us, and especially when Stonebridge week comes because we get up for big games like Herndon, even though we lost. But, we're ready for them.
Yeah, you mentioned that Herndon loss. It was only by 4 points, or you guys would be undefeated this year. It's unbelievable to think that. Before we let you go, let's ask you about Coach Ellenberger. You mentioned him kind of keeping that confidence level. He seems like a lot of fun. What's he like in the locker room? I mean, after the game, he had you guys all huddled up, and he goes, it's the first time I've been 4-1. And, just to hear a coach, he seems like he really connects with you guys. Got about 30 seconds. If you had to kind of label Coach Ellenberger, what would you call him in one word? And be careful because you got to go back to that locker room.
I just have to say his voice is the funniest thing because he has a Pennsylvania accent and it's hilarious.
Yeah, everyone on the team mimics him because it's just so funny. But, he's a real laid-back coach, and, he wants to win so bad, and he has a lot of confidence in his players, and he's a player's coach. That's what kind of coach he is.
All right. Well, perfect segue back into the Players' Lounge. Want to thank Sean Price and want to thank Jawan Jones for coming on the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm BJ Kubarulis, and this has been another look inside the Players' Lounge. Now back to you, Monica.
All right, well, we will have more about Southlake's big win later on in the program, including highlights and photos. But right now, let's take a look at the Patriot District and what happened with our Patriot District teams this past week. You see there still Lee is perfect on the season so far. Also, Woodson coming up with a big win. So let's talk now about W.T. Woodson's win over Westfield. Now, last week we talked about Woodson's running game, and the running game was the story for them. This week you see their quarterback, Connor Riley, putting up impressive numbers, almost 200 passing yards. You see there a 66-yard touchdown pass to Colin Dempsey, who's been one of his favorite targets so far this season. But guys, in taking a look at this, what really stands out to me is Woodson's defense. I know people look at Westfield's record, they say they're having a down year, but they're a very capable team, and Woodson holds them to only 7 points.
Anytime you hold any high school team, any team to 7 points, it's a big deal, because it's an offensive kind of game, scoring lots of points and all that, but 7 points, it's a big deal. It's a good credit to Woodson's defense.
Yeah, and I think Monica hit the nail on the head. It's something we overlook often with this team because they have the running backs that kind of split carries, split the love. Connor Riley, one of the best quarterbacks in the region. A lot of capable weapons outside. We overlook this defense, but if you've looked in the last 7 quarters against Chantilly and Westfield, they've given up 14 points. So a very capable defense. We take a look at the highlights. This one, Woodson really just dominated. Connor Riley, play fake, goes to the line of scrimmage, rolls out, and call him cashier, Paul, because he'll make you pay. Finds Josh, don't call me James Hogan, for the 26-yard touchdown connection, making it 7-0. And then Woodson again. Westfield goes 3 and out, gives the ball back to them. Riley going over the middle to Bertrand Mgampa. Appears to be gone, Paul. He's fast, really fast, but now he's only kind of fast. Gets caught from behind by Vinny Caparozzi at the 7-yard line, but it's all good. Just 2 plays later, Riley calling his own number. When you call your own number, Paul, it's busy. 1-yard touchdown run, 14-0. Woodson after 1, but Westfield first play of the second quarter caps a 12-play, 67-yard drive that lasted 5 minutes, 13 seconds. That Danny Fenyak 1-yard touchdown plunge. Your score, 14-7. But midway through the second quarter, Woodson coming back, and they're using the home run threat. I talked about their yards per attempt in my preview on Digital Sports. This will help that number. 8.8 yards per attempt for them, second highest total for the season. Dempsey, 66-yard touchdown reception from Riley. And now end of the half. 4th and goal for Westfield. Logan Hancock with the QB hurry breaks it up, gives Woodson a 21-17 lead at the break, and that was huge. If Westfield scores there, it's 21-14, but as we have it, third quarter, Bertrand Mgampa has 99 problems. That pitch ain't one. 16-yard touchdown, 16-yard run, 28-7. That's our final. I stumbled like crazy, but Woodson still gets the win by 21 points on the road.
Woodson, a team that was comfortable in the Liberty District, placing second behind Stonebridge last year, gets put in the Patriot District, the Godzilla District, as we call it right now this year. How for real are them beating Chantilly and Westfield?
Well, I don't think the PowerPoints lie. In my PowerPoint rankings, I take into account strength of schedule as well as the current schedule. The VHSL, the official ones, only take games you've played. I do the whole body of work. Patriot District's fared very well outside of the district. We talked about that at length this year. Woodson, as it stands, is tied for second with South County. Now, those two teams play in Week 10, so it could be a very interesting matchup if we get to that point. They beat Braddock on the road. They did lose to Lee, but beating Chantilly at home, beating Westfield on the road, those are some serious teams. Those aren't cupcakes on the schedule, and as right now they sit 4-1.
Having a good year are the Cavaliers. You mentioned South County. Monica has all the details on South County's game against West Potomac.
Well, guys, it seems to me with South County, they're almost getting overlooked in a sense because Lee gets a lot of attention. Woodson now, the new team in the Patriot District, getting a lot of attention. But South County has been very solid so far this year as well. They squared off against West Potomac this past weekend, and you see there the score. South County coming up with the big win, 23-7. But guys, the thing you have to know about this one, the score was all tied up at halftime, and then David Jordan coming up with 2 big touchdowns during the third quarter. He was also huge for South County last week. Guys, David Jordan is becoming a guy that Pete Bendorf really can rely on becoming a huge player for the Stallions.
Giving the Stallions another playmaker, and one thing that BJ Carulis always says, don't bet against a Bendorf. Pete Bendorf and Mark Bendorf both having fantastic years, but South County getting another offensive weapon.
Yep, and 16 carries, 108 yards, 2 scores in this one. I think also another we need to talk about with this team as well is their defense. In terms of scoring, they're the top-ranked team in Division 6, give up the lowest points per game. Here, hold a very potent West Potomac team to just 7 points. And in this game, again, David Jordan gets the job done, but the turning point came actually after Jordan's touchdown. On the kick coverage, ball kind of got stuck in the corner. West Potomac return man had to bring it out and got caught up. Logan Baskin-Robbins tackled him at the 1-yard line. Next play, David Jordan's in the end zone. The game goes from 14-7. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There was a safety. And then after the kickoff, South County drove the length of the field and scored. So you go from 14-7 to 16 and then 23-7. And from then, it's curtains. So South County really, they're a team that's able to really put teams away. So you have to score on this team early or you just won't.
All right, so Woodson and South County had easy victories. T.C. Williams, Monica, they had a tougher time.
They did, and you look at their record, they're 2-3. I think they're better than that record indicates. This week they had to square off against West Springfield, and going back to 2 weeks ago, in their game 2 weeks ago, their defense looked really solid. They've got a great defense behind Damian Benton and Kello Abe, but the offense had a little trouble getting started. They faltered a little bit in the first quarter, and it was a little too late. Now in this game against West Springfield, they get on the scoreboard first, but it's not enough. They have the heartbreaking 1-point loss, guys. But again, very impressed with T.C. Williams. They've just had a couple of tough losses.
All right, so we're working our way through the Patriot District, but we've saved the best for last. and that's Lee taking on Annandale.
Well, we were there. And guys, taking a look at these highlights, Paul, I know you were calling the game, so I'll let you take us through it.
Yeah, early in the first half had trouble with the ball. They fumbled 3 times in the first half. It didn't hurt them. It hurt them in the second. You see here the lead defense also coming on strong with a sack of Rick Adams, I'm sorry. There's another fumble by the Adams. And then Lee got into the action too. It wasn't really a slick field. I'm not sure what caused all the fumbles, but this was the big play of the first half. Greg Lopez, 85 yards, touchdown to Jackson. A fantastic way to get on the board for the Lancers, Phil.
Yeah, Paul, and I mean, we see the passing game here really utilizing the tunnel screens. Rafael Sanchez gets the reception there. 142 passing yards on the game for Lopez, but doing it with the triple option here, Paul, the 15-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, Lopez had a fantastic game leading his Lancers to a victory. You see Annandale gets on the board with a field goal.
By Donnie Derry McQueen, 30-yard field goal to close the half. Now, this is the ensuing kickoff.
Yeah.
This play made me say a bad word, Paul, when I first saw it. Idris Augustus, one of the nastiest runs you'll see, and it's a shame it got called back to offsetting penalties. There was a hold away from the play, and then Augustus, Bell gets ripped down by the face mask, shoves him to the ground. Why does this kid not have a Division I scholarship?
That did not count, but it is sure pretty to look at. And then here's where the fumbling hurt Annandale. I'm sorry. Right there, Lee gets the ball back in great territory, take a field goal off of it, and now, oh, I'm sorry, that field goal is actually no good, and now we're going to see Augustus soon here. Here's the Michelin man, Azulian. And here's Augustus right here, 85-yard
A triple option to the short side of the field. How he is to the left side of the field before he crosses the line of scrimmage just blows me away. And his 40 time officially is listed at 4.57. That's a lie. It's at least a tenth of a second faster than that. This kid on this run goes over 1,000 rushing and receiving yards on the season combined. He has more than that all-purpose.
Interception here by the league defense, which sets up another Lopez touchdown. You'll see it right there. Nice move. Decides to hang on to the ball. Gets into the end zone.
Yep, 55-yard run for Lopez on the day for him. 10 carries, 67 yards, 2 scores. If you take away sacks, the kid's over 80, 90 yards. Again, this team, 301 rushing yards, 3rd time this season they're at that total.
You're going to see another interception here by the lead defense. Kambe Koroma takes it to the house. Defensive score, pick 6. Everything was going Lee's way early on, but Annandale does come back.
They do. As you show Koroma, he had 2 sacks as well as that interception, but here a little confusion. Lee getting some guys with less experience in, kind of ran the wrong way, and then Annandale taking advantage. Stacey Anderson, a very solid player, does it with the reception and then onside kick. Lee has had some trouble in onside kicks, both this season and last season. Cost him a game last year at South County. Almost cost him against Hayfield earlier this year. And then Hichelin going upstairs to Donnie McQueen. Great for the kicker wide receiver flex position in our fantasy league, Paul. A guy like Donnie McQueen. Ray Goins also right up there towards the top of that list.
So 2 late touchdowns for Annandale. Made the game closer, a 10-point game, but Lee still wins. 33-23 Lopez with 142 passing yards and a touchdown, 67 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns as well. So what does it say about Lee? That we have them as, you know, one of the top teams in the Patriots district, if not the top team. Is it warranted?
Absolutely, it's warranted. I mean, this team came in averaging 356 rushing yards per game. That number barely dropped. Those are absurd numbers for a high school team. This team runs the ball well. They take care of the ball usually. Again, I think the one thing is they have to recover the onside kicks because they're going to be up late in a lot of games. Like I said, last year it cost them a game against South County. Almost cost them against Hayfield. And here they give one up here, let the game get closer than it is, fail to cover the spread, still get the win. The nice thing for them, since their schedule is so difficult, I think they can still get 1, maybe 2 losses. And even if a team like Stonebridge goes undefeated, because there's so many teams in the Liberty District that are going to be 1-9, 2-8, I think Lee can still get that top seed in Division 5 if they go maybe as low as 8-2.
After the game, Monica Moore talked with head coach Rob Everett and player of the game, Greg Lopez.
Standing here with our player of the game, Greg Lopez, and Lee head coach Rob Everett. Now, Greg, you had 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown. I want to talk to you about the pass to Aaron Jackson. What was going through your mind?
Well, I was reading the coverage before the snap, and I saw they only had 1 person playing Aaron, and he was already too short and didn't look very athletic. So I just trusted Aaron, threw the ball up, and he came out with it and made a play.
Now, you obviously have 2 great running backs standing back there with you. Can you talk a little bit about the play of Jasmine and Idreas?
Jasmine and Idreas, man, those 2 are just spectacular to have together. I mean, they feed off each other. Once one guy breaks, another guy breaks. I mean, they feed off each other's energy.
Now you guys they rededicated this field before the game. What does it feel like to play on this turf field?
It's the best feeling ever. And just to know that this is our field and we're 5-0, we're undefeated on it this season, that's the best feeling.
Now, Coach, what were you most pleased with during the second half?
I was pleased with the way we came out of the locker room, took advantage of some opportunities. A little disappointed the way the game ended, not finishing the game, and that's something we were just talking about that they're going to have to do a better job of as the season progresses and the stakes get higher.
I thought a really big play was right after Dell cut the score during the third quarter. You responded very quickly with that touchdown from Idreas. Can you talk a little bit about how important it was to respond so quickly?
Well, momentum is a huge game, especially when you're playing someone like Annandale and Dick Adams. You got to make sure you don't give them any room to get back into the game, and that was huge. And that's not the first or the last time that he's going to do that. And it's great for us to. You can get down, giving up a big play on a broken coverage to be able to come right back and score and take the rest of the momentum back is terrific.
And one player who may not always get all the press, Kambe Karoma. Can you talk about that interception return?
Well, Kambe was lucky to be in the game because of a personal foul penalty that he got. Kambe is the example of what our defense is. Undersized but make up for it with hustle, and that kid and the rest of they don't stop moving, and I'm glad he scored because it looked like he wanted to run to the bench a little too soon, but I'm proud of Kambe for coming back after a personal foul situation, but also making it up through hustle.
Coach Greg, congratulations on being 5-0.
Okay, so that's it from the Patriot District this week. Now let's shift gears and talk a little more about the Liberty District, since you've already heard quite a bit from BJ Kubarulis over in the Players Lounge. But let's show you what happened with the rest of the Liberty District teams this week. You see Stonebridge still perfect. They're one of our 3 undefeated teams, again, along with Robinson and Lee. A couple of other teams coming up with big wins. We'll talk about that Langley win as well. But since we've already talked about it quite a bit, let's talk a little more about South Lakes versus Mclean, because this was a big one. 2 3-1 teams squaring off in the Liberty District. We've already spoiled it for you. You know that South Lakes won, and South Lakes came out of the box strong with this one as well, guys. We talked a little earlier about Chantilly, but South Lakes coming out with the first 3 touchdowns, 2 of those to Sean Price, who BJ Kubarulis talked with earlier, and then Jawan Jones. We're going to talk about running backs later in the show. This is one of the best in the region as well. Jawan Jones coming up with 223 rushing yards. Riley Biero tries to recover for his team. Mclean tries to overcome this South Lakes effort. But guys, it's just not enough, and the Seahawks come out with the win.
I had a chance to watch South Lakes play Herndon earlier on in the year, and one thing that jumped out to me is that's a rivalry, the Barron Karen Bowl, that Herndon just dominates. It's dominated for years, but the game was so close. And we know Herndon's a decent team as well. Herndon ended up winning, but I was kind of like, okay, well, this South Lakes team, this is a different South Lakes team. Also Mclean, this is a different Mclean team from last year. These are much stronger teams. I mean, look at the Liberty District, a district where it's Stonebridge and everybody else. South Lakes and Mclean are up there.
Yeah, and I've been saying all year, I thought Mclean would increase its win total by 5 wins. They have 3 teams on its schedule between Langley, Madison, and Jefferson that are combined 1-14 at this point, Paul. So I think that Mclean has a chance to go 6-4, tie Lake Braddock's VHSL record for the largest single-season turnaround. Yes, this game hurts that cause, but you kind of had the feeling this would happen. Once the season started going, once you saw Mclean play Herndon close, South Lakes play Herndon close, you kind of thought, okay, Stonebridge number 1 in this district, but number 2, Mclean knocks off Madison. Mm-hmm. South Lakes knocks off Mclean. Now Madison and South Lakes play this weekend, if I can spit that out. These 3 teams play each other. You're kind of feeling they'd all kind of knock each other off. And as we take a look at the highlights in this game, it was South Lakes early here. Third play from scrimmage for them. He got a 3rd and long, but there's not going to be a need to measure. Sean Rana rolls. A Price is right, Paul. Sean Price, come on down. 78-yard touchdown reception from Sean Rana puts South Lakes on the board immediately, 7-0. Now, early second quarter, getting it done with the running game. And, Paul, we always see these commercials about having a going problem. I think this is what they're talking about. You can't stop going. 67-yard touchdown run for Jawan Jones. Finishes on the day, 17 carries, 233 yards. He has 733 rushing yards this season. He's a junior. makes it 14-0. Then next South Lake's possession. This is maybe the play of the game here. Rana just throwing it up for Sean Price and go up and get it. We knew his brothers at Penn State. Great reception there. Catches the back half of the ball. As we take a second look, watch where his hands are when he grabs his ball. Catches the back half of it, pulls it in. Great concentration. 21-0 to South Lakes. But end of the quarter, 3rd and 10. Riley Byros out wide. They love to run the fade of this. Coach Ellenberger said he knew it was coming. He just can't stop it. 28-yard touchdown reception from Will What the Heck to Riley Byro makes it 21-7 at recess. But third quarter, this is where things got interesting. Chase Mills steps in front of this out route. He's not doing anything tonight, Paul. He's just heading back to the crib. 20-yard interception return for a touchdown. It's 21-14, but South Lakes getting themselves some defensive fantasy points as well. Seth Howder catches a tip pass off Jonathan Furman's fingertips, and then great return. One of the plays of the week here. Weaves his way through the defense. 33-yard interception return for a score. That made it 28-14. Riley Byro would add a rushing touchdown. He finished 32 carries, 193 yards on the night. Still, you saw two of the top running backs in the Liberty District here. I think it's a 3-horse race between Jones, Byro, and Harris. South Lakes, though, showed some durability at the end. They did let that lead deflate a little bit, but they still come out with the win.
I think with Stonebridge, everybody talking about Stonebridge maybe having a down year. They say it every year, but maybe Stonebridge having a down year. Woodson leaving the Liberty District. I think that energized these teams. You know, we got a chance of playing for this district title, playing to get into the regional tournament. So it's helping everybody out, I believe.
Oh, yeah, and we'll talk about Langley later, but you got a team like that comes out and plays a great game on Saturday at Herndon. A lot of no team outside of Stonebridge, I say, is really safe in any week. And then you look at the top, the 2nd through 4 teams, Madison, South Lakes, and Mclean. You can shuffle them up in any order you want. I think if Stonebridge has a down night, there's a possibility Stonebridge will lose its first Liberty District game. Now, they are 31-0, all-time in Liberty District player, 30-0, I'm sorry. But it would be hard to imagine. But these teams are talented teams. I think they're the heir apparents to that Liberty throne.
You see a team like Fairfax having 2 wins now. Very happy to be out of the Concord District. A team like Langley getting a big win over Herndon, and Monica has all the details.
Well, Langley got their first win of the season this past week, and you see they squared off out of district against Herndon. It was homecoming for the Hornets, but things did not go their way. Langley coming out exceptionally strong, over 200 rushing yards in the first 14 minutes of the game. Now, Zach Osick tries to recover for his team. He's the 3rd-year starting quarterback for the Hornets. You see the numbers that he put up. We'll have a graphic for you. 117 passing yards, a rushing touchdown, but it was just not enough. The guy that had the breakout game was Braden Anderson for Langley. We've talked about him a bit this season, but this was his game. 271 passing yards and a touchdown, guys. He certainly picked a good game to come out and make a name for himself in the region.
Yeah, Phil, where does that come from? I mean, where does 28 points, Langley, who is having a tough time this year, explode? And
the crazy thing is, this could have been a lot worse. Langley had 4 goal-to-go situations in the first half that they only turned into 7 points. Now, they were up 15-7 at halftime. But Marcus Harris was on the sideline. He's one of their better running backs. The sophomore stud was in a walking boot. Farhan Khan was unavailable for the first half. This team had numbers against it, but they still come out and they dominated this game. They outgained Herndon 227-35 in the first 14 minutes. This helped. A 92-yard touchdown pass from Braden Anderson to Chris Welby. This isn't bad for the passer rating either. 8 of 13 passing, 165 yards for Anderson in the first quarter. Langley has to go for 2 because they didn't have their kicker. Their holder had blood on his hands, so he had to come out of the game. They go for 2 and get it. It's 8-0. Then second quarter, here's Austin Pritchett. Pardon me while I first to the end zone. 1-yard touchdown run. Makes it 15-0. At this point, they had the ball 10 of the 14 minutes. Outgained Herndon 225-37. But Herndon coming back. Zach Osick here on the jet sweep. He has 99 problems, but you know what? Pitches just cause problems. He's taking it himself. 20-yard touchdown run for Osick. Makes it 15-7. And then Langley, and actually if you saw there, Osick, his name was misspelled on his homecoming jersey. That can't be a good omen for them. Langley coming back, 1st and goal here with just 2 minutes, 19 seconds left in the half. Anderson looks for Joey Kiffey on the fade, but Davon Thompson go up and get it. Interception in the end zone. Again, Langley, four goal-to-go situations in the first half. They only get 7 points out of those. They had 2 4-and-outs inside the 10-yard line in the first quarter. Now, third quarter, Herndon making a comeback, and everyone at halftime is like, okay, when's this team going to come up and get going? We thought this was it. Devon Thompson, 3-yard touchdown run right here. That made it 15-13 after the failed 2-point conversion, but Langley not going away. Austin Pritchett had the Jerome Bettis fantasy day, 4 carries, 7 yards, 2 touchdowns. puts this one in with 1:06 left in the third quarter. That made it 22-13. Then Maurice Scott recovered a fumble on the ensuing kickoff. Abe Yee, honest Abe Yee, 1-yard touchdown run. He had 16 carries, 65 yards, 55 of those yards coming after halftime. This team looked like the Langley of years past, and they were 6-4 every year. We knew they were replacing three-year starters in their backfield with Pritchett, Eklund, and Helmer all graduating. This team now, they look like they haven't missed a beat. They just came out of nowhere, Paul.
Don't forget, this is a very young team. It's a young team when you talk about the offensive backfield. I mean, earlier on, they were talking about how this is the most talented backfield that Langley's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
You hadn't seen it because they're so young, so raw, but it's starting to come together. You mentioned Abe Yee had a great game. Just a bunch of different players that are going to contribute eventually, and you're seeing it maybe they're starting to.
And it was just crazy because you remember coming into this game, this team had 7 points this season that did not come off turnovers. They struggled to create points. They hung in the game with Chantilly, but that's because they were able to create interceptions. And I talked to Coach Howerton after the game and said, were you having flashbacks to that game? Because they had some opportunities to pull away there, kind of gave those away. He said, yeah, we just told the guys, you need this win. They came out, they were so pumped up. And now Langley, I don't think this team's going to be as bad as we thought they were last week. I think this team can come out and win 3 of its final 5 games.
And what does it say about Herndon? Herndon, a team, we just gave all that love to South Lakes. Herndon beat South Lakes. Mm-hmm. Herndon, a team that was an up-and-comer in the down Concord district. Are they looking past the Saxons?
I don't think they're looking past the Saxons at all. I think the issue is, what we keep forgetting with Herndon is, yes, they return a lot of skill position players in Osick, great quarterback. In Pellizzeri, stud receiver. Anani, Thompson, Abitre Dodo, all those guys in their backfield are great running backs. However, they lost a lot in the offensive and defensive line. Langley sent 11 guys Division I in the last 6 years on their offensive line, so they get the lead second half. They're just running it straight at them. So that's a bad omen for Herndon coming up in the Concord district because they have Centerville this week, a team that's very speedy, and if you don't make that first tackle, they have home run threat capability. And then you look at the rest of their schedule, 4 Concord district teams, Robinson, Chantilly, Westfield, Oakton. You have to be able to play well in the trenches. So this offensive line needs to grow up a little bit and mature a little bit, or this team is really going to struggle in the coming weeks. I think that's what caused Herndon to fall in this game.
When you talk about John Howerton and you talk about the Saxons, you talk about getting in the weight room, you talk about the offensive and defensive line. He calls himself a control freak about that. That's his one quirk. He needs to get his players into the weight room, and it helps.
And he's a Hall of Famer at Shepherd University. He's a Hall of Fame offensive lineman. So we'll throw it back to Monica and see what else she has for us.
All right, one last Liberty district game to show you. Stonebridge coming up with the big win over Marshall. You see the numbers that Marcus Harris putting up. He has been consistent all season long for the Bulldogs. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk some volleyball. We'll be back with the National District in just a minute, but first we want to show you our Fsn Volleyball Rankings. So you'll see that there wasn't a lot of movement this week. Chantilly's still holding strong now. The Chargers took a little time off. They had a game against Stewart on the 23rd, then played again last night against TC Williams, beating the Titans 3-0, so they're holding strong in the number 1 position. And then South County, you see also still in the number 2 position. They beat Woodson on Monday 3-0, and they square off against Robinson on Thursday. I talked about that game last week. That's one I've been really looking forward to. I think that'll be a good test for both of those teams. Stonebridge in the 3rd place position. I'll talk about their game against Westfield earlier this week in just a minute, but let's talk now about Robinson. They lost to Battlefield on Monday, so they're going to be looking to regroup against South County again. I think that's going to be a really good one. And then Herndon there, I don't have the latest stat in there for them, but last night they squared off against Langley. Langley having a little bit of a tough season so far, but Langley winning that one. So the Hornets losing 2-3, they'll be looking to regroup as well. And let's turn our spotlight now to a couple of other teams. First of all, let's take a look at Fairfax. They were squaring off against Thomas Jefferson back on October 1st. Now, this has been a rivalry that's been a little tough for the Rebels because consistently what has happened for them is they'll win the first 2 games, then falter during the 3rd game, and Thomas Jefferson will win the last 3 in the set. You see there that it looked like history might be repeating itself in that 3rd game, but Fairfax was able to hold on, and 2 ladies that were very big for the Rebels were their 2 middle hitters there, Ann Sung and Kevin Richmond. So Fairfax coming up with the win against Thomas Jefferson. And then I promised you we would talk a little bit about the Battle of the Bulldog, Westfield versus Stonebridge. Now, Stonebridge, the more experienced club this year, lots of returning players. Westfield a bit younger. You see Stonebridge winning there in 3 games. Westfield battled strong during the first 2 games. In fact, they were down during that second game. They scored 9 points in a row, but during the third game, just too much for the young Westfield Bulldogs to overcome. And you see the stats there from some of the players that I've talked about a lot on this program so far. Amanda Miller, again, one of my favorite setters in the region with those 33 assists, and then Lindsay Gill, 24 digs. So that is it for volleyball. Let's turn our attention back to football with the National District. We'll show you what the standings look like after week 5. One team coming up with a big win is Edison, guys. So we're going to jump into that in just a second. You see how the rest of the district broke down. But Edison playing out of district, squaring off against Oakton, a big Concord district team, and Edison coming up with the victory. Levi Barber back. You see the numbers that he put up with this big win. Oakton trying to recover with their star quarterback Jimmy Boone, and guys just can't do it.
I was down on the Eagles earlier on this year. This is the game that shows me that Edison is still for real.
Paul, generally you're a negative person, so that's what I think that's for. Edison, a very good team, and they play the Concord District well. If you remember, last year against Chantilly, Week 10, 4th and 11, 15-yard touchdown pass from Levi Barber to Christian Washington. And then this season against Centerville, 4th and 19 conversion sets up the game-winning field goal. They win that game 21-20. We jump right into the highlights here. Oakton dominating early. They ran 18 of the 22 offensive plays in the first quarter. Here is Luke Willis on the give from Jimmy Boone. And like D'Angelo Williams said at draft day, he's a north-south runner, more north. 10-yard touchdown run for Willis makes it 7-0, but Edison bouncing right back. They came back in the second quarter, got things going. Bill Arnaz here. Drano on the 27-yard field goal makes it 7-3 in favor of the Cougars. Cut that lead down, but a 59-yard return by Luke Willis gave Oakton some leeway here. They won the battle of field position, and Jimmy Boone, 39-yard touchdown reception to Matt Chandler. Boone, dominant in the first half. More on that later, but we go in the second half. Now, this is where the game turned right here. 14-3 is your score. Oakton ball. This team struggled to move the ball in the fourth quarter through the air. Play action pass, Boone looking deep, but he ordered this pass with no pickles. Gerald Haywood, 25-yard interception return for a score, makes it 14-10. Edison kicks the ball off. Oakton goes 3 and out to get the ball back, and here is your play of the game. Just over 3 minutes remaining. Score is 14-11 after a real comfortable Levi Barber 2-point conversion. Then Angus Harper on the screen pass. He's the bomb like tick, tick. 54-yard screen touchdown makes it 18-14 Eagles. They salt the game away. Chris Washington here, game-sealing interception. Jimmy Boone in the last 3 games in the fourth quarter, 4 for 13 passing, 32 yards, no touchdowns, 5 picks. This team against Annandale last week, 21-0 lead. They let that get shrunk to 27-14. This time, they're up 14-3, really have control of the game at halftime. Edison outscores them 15-0 in the second half. Paul, what's up with that?
Not sure. On Edison, again, they're a strong team. They're coming together, and they picked up the win.
Yeah, I think Oakton, though, needs to be able to close out games a little bit better. They have a gauntlet of a schedule coming up. I mean, still the entirety of its Concord District schedule coming up. These games they need to take and learn from. Learn from the close win, the closer than it should have been win at Annandale. A very good Annandale team. They really dominated that game. But this game they really had in the bag. They really could have used this game in terms of power points because we all know Edison's going to win a ton of national district games. Now this loss hurts them a little bit, so I think this team really has to finish better. But Coach Joe Thompson, we know, one of the best coaches around. Great staff there at Oakton. They're going to rebuild from this. They'll be fine, but just something you need to watch out for. How this team fares in the third and fourth quarter over the next couple weeks, I think that's going to determine its potential for the postseason. All
right, one more game I want to talk about. Washington and Lee beating Thomas Jefferson 7-0. Anthony Taylor, 107 rush yards and a touchdown. David Roddy, 94 rushing yards. Kevin Karn, 94 passing yards and an INT.
2 key plays in this game, and that's really all it came down to. Anthony Taylor, first half, 66-yard touchdown run in the first quarter, and then with just seconds left, Washington Lee was trying to take a safety. They snapped the ball to the punter in their own end zone. David Roddy runs 75 yards up the sideline. He just ran into the corner of the end zone. TJ didn't get wide. He just took off, ran out the entire clock on that 75-yard run. Score should have been 7-2, kind of a baseball score. We get the 7-0 final. Washington Lee takes out Jefferson.
All right, we've teased it. Our new top 10. Monica is going to take us through it.
Well, that's right. We promised you that we would have a new #1 team this week. So let's unveil our FSN top 10 rankings, you see Robinson taking over the #1 position, edging out Stonebridge and holding off Lee. Lee moving up in the rankings. Very impressed with them after their win against Annandale last week. You see a little indecision at the 5th place position. A couple of Patriot District teams we just weren't sure what to do with. But you see there Lake Braddock, Woodson, and South County all tied there with 19 points. We vote on these. Those were the points that they got from us here at the Fairfax Sports Network. And then rounding out the bunch, a couple of new faces in the crowd were Woodson and then South Lakes. Again, we had Juwan Jones and Sean Price earlier in the program to talk with you about their big win over Mclean. They're getting a little respect from us this week. We're putting them in our rankings because of that very impressive win. They'll square off against Madison this weekend, which is going to lead us into our picks. First of all, let's show you what we did last week. You see how the breakdowns happened, and BJ once again coming up very strong, and then Paul there with 4, and you see how the rest of it breaks down. Now let's unveil the picks that we made for this week. You'll see a lot more consensus among the bunch. And so, of course, the big thing that I'm going to ask about is the one thing that we do disagree about. So, Phil, why don't you tell us about your pick for the Lee Lake Braddock game?
Well, as you can see, I'm the lowest of the bunch. I'm an idiot. I have 11 this year. I can't pick anything for the life of me. I came out, and I want to talk about last week first. I came out and I said on air that Woodson, their coach, seemed a little bit down after that win to Chantilly, and I thought they didn't have as much momentum as you would have thought. Well, I stand by that statement, but they used that as motivation. They took that win and treated it as a loss in their locker room. So they get the W at Chantilly, which is going to help them with power points in the end, and they come out firing on all cylinders, take out Westfield next week. Now, back to Monica's initial point that I've been trying to avoid like the plague. Lake Braddock against Lee. I was the one person that picked Lake Braddock. And this one I really agonized over because I know how great Lee's rushing attack is, but they haven't seen anyone close to Lake Braddock's size. That includes Westfield. One coach in the region told me Lake Braddock's defensive line could start at JMU this weekend. They're that big. They have 6'6", 300 bookends on the offensive line. They could run QB dive all day with Mike Niebrick. I think the key, again, with Lake Braddock this season is don't throw picks. They have 13 interceptions this year through 5 games. Now, they only had 1 last week and played very, very close with Robinson. I think if Lake Braddock minimizes his turnovers, Lee will still get its 200 rushing yards, but I think Lake Braddock will win a very close game.
Rob Everett, I hope you are watching. One game I want to talk about, Madison, South Lakes. We all picked Madison. That's a close game because we know South Lakes is a great team, so that's one to keep your eye on as well.
Well, that is right, because certainly we just put South Lakes into our rankings. We all picked Madison to win, so you might think there's a little indecision here, but it's homecoming. It's at Madison for this 50th anniversary celebration, so that certainly influenced a little bit in making those decisions. But now we're going to unveil something. It's the middle of the season, so we've ranked our top 3 for various offensive positions. Next week we'll have the defense, but let's unveil to you our quarterbacks. These are who we each think are the top 3 after seeing a lot of these teams play this season. So guys, I'm going to ask you about a couple. We all seem to agree on Connor Riley. That's one. No surprise there. So I'm going to ask about Levi Barber. He's a kid that we just saw some of that highlight reel footage of. And then Greg Lopez, we just saw him this past weekend against Annandale.
Well, Greg Lopez, for one, we just saw him. I saw how capable he is. He gets lost in the spotlight when you have Augustus and Jasmine Williams. He is just as capable and a big reason why this team is undefeated.
Yeah, Paul, I completely agree. And we showed the rankings. Actually, I had Barber number 2 behind Connor Riley. I think Riley is on his way to regional quarterback of the year, maybe even regional offensive player of the year. I think it'd be very hard to beat out Idris Augustus. But Levi Barber, I put him in for the same reason you put in Lopez. He's a game manager. He's a dual threat. I kind of agonize between those two. So I would put Riley 1, Barber 2, and Jimmy Boone a close 3rd.
And we all agree Connor Riley is just fantastic this year. Monica, let's go to the running backs, and it looks like Augustus right there. Obviously, that's a key. Phil, walk me through your list there.
Walk you through my list. I think Idris Augustus should be the state player of the year. It's a sin this kid doesn't have any Division I offers. I think they're going to come in a flood at some point. Marcus Harris, I love. I think he is the heartbeat of Stonebridge. He scored 6 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Angus Harper, you saw him get the game-winning touchdown against Oakton. With Levi Barber out of the lineup, he put the team on his back, 232 yards on 22 carries. 2 guys that left off this list, Rayshon Riggins, Riley Byro. That's because initially when we made the list, we had a utility position, which was running back / returner. So I put Riggins, Byro, and Chris Washington on that list. That's why they're absent from my running back list, and not to ruin everything. Chris Washington's absent from my receiver list. So it's not a shot at them. We just had a utility position. I thought they fit in perfectly that because both those guys are great kick returners.
Let's go to the wide receivers now, Phil, and let's see what you chose there. One person I want to mention, Matt Zellanato. I could not say his name when I called the Robinson game a couple weeks ago.
Just forget it.
Zanilato.
There you go.
There you go. See, I said it. I think he's a playmaker.
All right, unanimous across the top. Marcus Robinson, much like we had with Idris Augustus. Warren Denny I include in there because I think he's one of the best possession receivers in the region, and he played huge against Mount Vernon this week. Had a great catch on a 2-point conversion. It's only scrimmages. He averaged 9 yards of reception in the scrimmages. This kid's good for 5 catches a game.
One thing that I really wanted to put in here is a top 3 offensive line units, being a former Northern Region offensive lineman, and there's really no discussion. Robinson right there, they're 5-0, they're a great running team. You see why, they're offensive line. Lee, also with the great running team, you see great running teams, great offensive lines, Phil.
Yep, and the reason Robinson, I put them at number 1, I can say right now, because they had to replace 3 skill position guys in their offensive backfield, and they're actually better than they were last year. So this team, I mean, they deserve to be number 1. The reason I didn't include Lee, it's not a shot at them. I just think they have the most talented offensive backfield. And so I have a problem putting them in. I've seen West Springfield play in person. I was a little bit more impressed with them against Edison than I was with Lee's O-line against Woodson. Not a shot at Lee. I'd put, this is a top 5 list, they'd be in my top 5. And then Lake Braddock doesn't get any bigger than KK and Phillips on bookending that line.
Yeah, I mean, Lake Braddock has that huge offensive line. I put Oakton in there just because they are the senior leadership on that team. Monica, there it is, our top 3 offensive people for each category.
Take it, Monica.
Through the first half.
And again, we will have defensive players as well as punters and kickers next week, so never fear if you think we left that off our list. But before we go, we again want to thank the folks that help make our program possible. First of all, our friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. And of course, Craig Sturbutzel for those great photos that you see throughout all of our episodes. You can get copies of this program and the games that we broadcast at www.pressboxvideo.com and check out our website for highlights and video features with the Video Vault. Don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on Facebook and send us any story ideas to our email address. Well, again, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back again next week.